Welcome. This is AI and personalization in restaurant marketing, where the industry stands and what's coming next. Produced by Nation's Restaurant News, this program is being sponsored and presented by Thanx. Thanx is a guest engagement platform to help restaurants drive traffic and build profitable customer relationships through dynamic loyalty programs, personalized marketing, and modern digital experiences on app and web. I'm Alan Little, and on behalf of NRN, I'll be your moderator for this program featuring Chris Douglas of Small Sliders, Aaron Newton of Thanx, and Jessica Serrano of Bagel Brands. We'll hear from that trio shortly, but first, some housekeeping. If at any time you experience difficulties with the audio or the slides do not advance, press the F5 key on a Windows system to refresh your webinar console. Use Command and R keys on an Apple device. If that fails, look to the help widget at the bottom of your screen or type your technical question into the console Q&A area. That Q&A area is also where you can enter questions you might have about our topic. Type yours in at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can later in the session. So this presentation is being recorded for on-demand viewing. You'll receive an email with link when that replay is available. Before I get out of the way, please let me share a few speaker career notes. Jessica Serrano is Chief Marketing Officer at Bagel Brands, parent of the Einstein Brothers, Brugger's, Noah's, and Manhattan Bagels chains. Previously, among other assignments, she was Chief Marketing Officer at Dig In, Senior Director of Marketing Strategy for Burger King, Director of Brand Marketing at Taco Bell, and Associate Business Manager for Dole. Aaron Newton is Thanx Chief Data Officer, leading the company's loyalty and guest engagement platform for restaurants. Before Thanx, he was a product designer and user experience developer at Cloudera, Senior Product Manager for digital consumer trends publication CNET, and was the founder of Iminta.com and co-founder of Ebitonic.com. And Chris Douglas is Vice President of Technology for Small Sliders. His earlier roles included Director of IT Strategy and Project Management Office Execution for Inspire Brands, whose 7 concepts include Dunkin', Buffalo Wild Wings, and Arby's, Senior Program Manager for both Arby's and the Coca-Cola Company, and a Senior Portfolio Manager for Johnson & Johnson. Okay, so that's it for upfront notes. So let's hear from today's topic note experts. Aaron Newton, would you please start this information exchange?
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's joined today. I've attended a lot of webinars about AI. I've sat through a bunch of these and come away wondering if I learned anything. I hope today is going to be fun, informative, and interesting. Primarily, we're here just to talk about how this stuff is impacting ourselves as individuals and our teams, and what we're going to do about it, using it to help impact our relationship with our customers. I'm joined today by both Jessica and Chris, who have illustrious backgrounds in building restaurant communication systems and marketing platforms in order to drive customer behavior. And they have their own unique perspectives and their own journeys that they're going through with this technology. I'm sure that everyone who's joined the call today is kind of on their own trip with this thing. And so my hope is that the conversation that we're going to have to get today is interesting and illuminating, and maybe gives you some new ideas on how to look at it. We're going to do a couple of quick polls. We're going to talk about terminology to make sure we're all on the same page. And then we're just going to dive in and talk about what it means for this technology to impact ourselves, our teams, and our business. So we're going to start with the first poll. And I just want to get a temp check. How is everybody feeling about this thing? It's now, August of 2025. This is the moment in your career where you've been caught by the whirlwind of this technology, or maybe haven't. Maybe you feel like it's leaving you behind. Maybe you feel like you're at the forefront of it. Take a moment here and click off which one of these things maybe resonates most with you. I'm going to give this maybe 30 seconds for everyone to give a little selection there. I'm going to check in with our hosts. Oh, now it's anonymous, and no one who's watching today will see who selected what. I'm going to quickly read through these things for us. I don't really use it. Maybe I have objections to it, or a business doesn't allow it or frowns upon it. I dabble with it. I've played with it, but I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface. I use this thing a lot, but I know I could get way more out of it. And I feel like I'm at the head of the class. Everyone I talk to, I seem to be the one they look at and say, wow. Give about 5 more seconds here for those of you on the fence. All right, I'm going to click over. You can still, I think you can still vote after I click over, maybe not. All right, yes, and it actually is completely anonymous. Even in the data on the back end, I'm being confirmed by our hosts. All right, so let's move forward here. We have a few people who are in the I'm not really touching this thing yet. A lot of people in the I'm dabbling, I'm barely scratching the surface. And then the rest of us are in the I use it a lot, but I know it can do more powerful things. I'll go first amongst our three speakers. I'm in category three. I know I'm doing some truly wild and crazy stuff. I'm building applications and software with it, but I meet with people every day who blow my socks off. And so I have actually a hunch that even the people who are getting a lot out of this technology continue to see others who somehow are getting more. Jessica, I'm curious, which one of these boxes would you check?
It's certainly all relative because based off my conversations with you, I see you as head of the class, but I can imagine that you speak to folks that are doing even more wild things. So I think I'm squarely in C, using it in a lot of
Hmm.
powerful ways, but still so under leveraged.
Hmm. And Chris.
I would have to say I concur. I'm in the same boat. I use it a lot in a lot of different facets and areas, but definitely know that I can do more and expand upon the use cases I'm currently exploring. So I think it's one of those journeys that's going to continue to persist as you go forward as this whole area evolves.
I agree. Part of the conversation today is for us to explore what doing more with it looks like and how we explore those things on our own individual paths and also as a company. Um, for my part, Jessica, I feel the same way. I spend time with people who make me realize I've only begun. And I think mostly it makes it an exciting place, for me at least. For those of you who are feeling like you're on the fence or you have objections or you're not allowed to use this, um, I I would encourage you to tune in today and um, evaluate that relationship with the technology and what it means for you to continue um, on, on finding your own path here. I think everybody has to find one, and that kind of brings us to our first section, first question. But before I do that, I'm going to go into some terminology. I think everybody kind of knows this stuff, but maybe not, and so I'm going to go kind of fast here. It's a good place for using the questions. If you see something in here that just doesn't resonate, you can drop a question, and I'll try and respond to it. So the first thing I want to talk about is this LLM thing that you might have heard. It stands for a large language model. This is a type of AI that uses a massive amount of language in order to create a matrix of understanding of relationships between words. It takes every word that it can find on the internet or in books and elsewhere in order to create an understanding that cat has a relationship to kitten and that puppy has a relationship to dog, and that they both are sort of related in some similar direction inside of this big multi-dimensional map of meaning. And what this allows is for the model to interact with you and understand what you mean, even if you're not using precise words that are in some precise order. It's what lets you search for kitten and find cat. So that's what a large language model does in a really simplistic way description. Some of the LLMs that are going to be talked about today include the models that are created by OpenAI and available to you in ChatGPT, in Claude, which is Anthropic's model. These things have different strengths, and depending on how you use them, you might find different success. Right now, Claude is definitely the preferred model for using it to write code, for example. Gemini by Google has been woven throughout Google's ecosystem. You may find that that is available to you more readily if your business is using Google's platform. Perplexity is sort of a AI-powered search engine that continues to get more agentic properties to do things for you. So these are some of the ones that we're going to talk about today, or you might hear about today. The next thing I want to talk about is generative AI. In many ways, what this technology does is it basically predicts what comes next. If I say the fork ran away with, it can predict that spoon comes next. And in many ways, when you're speaking to it, it mimics intelligence by guessing what comes next. It's just that it's really good at it. The same thing can be said when we train it on imagery or even how to drive a car. But generative AI specifically is about using this ability to predict what comes next to create content or to summarize information in a way that mimics how humans would do it. And how effective it is really just a function of how these models improve. Then we have this new thing called Model Context Protocol, MCP. And what this does is allows two different AIs to advertise to each other their capabilities. So if you have one that knows how to read the weather and another that understands how to read maps, they could talk to each other to create a map that has the weather on it. This ability for AIs to communicate with each other with a protocol is sort of like APIs are to the software we've had for a long time. And we'll probably talk about this more later in the conversation. And then the last thing I want to check in on is machine learning, which has been around for a very long time. What machine learning does is it takes a bunch of noise and it finds similarities and makes predictions about what's going to happen next. Usually, a great example here would be, I have a bunch of millions of consumers, and when they perform in this certain way, I can predict they're going to churn or they're not going to churn. And so taking noise and turning it into a prediction is machine learning, which is another form of AI that's not new. It's expensive, it's very performative and very effective when it comes to marketing. So we're done with the kind of schoolroom stuff. Again, if you have questions, throw them in. We'll try to keep up with those. I'm going to move into the second and last poll here. In this one, I'd like you to go and just check off the things you've tried to do with AI, whether it's succeeded or not, whether you feel like you really got everything you would hope for out of it. Have you tried having it write copy for you? Have you had it gone and use its deep research functions to just scour the internet and answer a question in an in-depth way? Have you had it design imagery or even maybe an application screen for you? Have you engaged with it as a thought partner where you just tell it what's on your mind and get a reflection back? Project planning, help me figure out the right order of operations to do this thing. A knowledge scribe where it's just helping you turn a bunch of loose information into structure that you can share with others. An analyst where you give it data that you ask it what it sees. A coder to write actual software for you. And then automation to use it to allow data to flow in from one side, do something with the LLM, and then flow out the other side, which you couldn't easily do with just, a spreadsheet or something like that. I'm going to give another 5-10 seconds. This one's a little bit longer to fill out. And it goes without saying, I'm very grateful for everyone who's participating right now. I'm still seeing some people kind of complete, and I don't want to cut people off in the middle of their clicking. 5 more seconds. All right, so let's see what we got. We have a lot of people engaging at the top of that list, research and copywriting. Then less so in this kind of designer, thought partner, project planner, knowledge, and then even less down in analyst, coder, and automation. I will go first here. I have essentially forced myself to go and try all of these things to varying degrees of success. And I find that every time that I fail at it, I learn a lot, and it inspires me to try something else. And the result is I now have a long list of things that I want to go try and don't have time to. But I also have found that the further down this list I go and get better at it, the more leverage I find in the technology. So that's me. Chris, I'm curious if you think about this list, which ones jump out to you as the ones that you've tried and learned the most from?
I would say the first few are the ones that I frequently tried and experienced, right? And the areas on the bottom to the list are the ones that I am heavily focused on exploring further, right? Especially as being a technologist, the coding, the automation, the things and capabilities that you can achieve potentially through AI once you've mastered it is where I'm trying to spend most of my intellectual capital these days. But so those are the areas that I'm actively focused on.
Jessica, what do you think?
Thought partnership on a daily and having fun experimenting with analytics and automation.
Interesting. I think this dovetails nicely into sharing a little bit about how we used AI just to prepare for this webinar, but then our first question. So we put a lot of this stuff together using AI as a thought partner to co-create content where we just talked to it about the topics we wanted to discuss, and it helped us put together a framework for it. It helped us schedule meetings. It helped us take notes during those meetings. We brainstormed ideas with it that we thought might be interesting to discuss based on the content of those discussions with Jessica and Chris. And then we refined the content of the slides itself. And we used Claude. I've been using Claude a lot lately. Again, I forced myself to bounce around a lot because I feel like as a leader in my organization, it's my job to go and try everything I can to help us make decisions about what to give to everyone in the business. Superhuman, which is an email client that has AI throughout. ChatGPT, Granola, which is the note taker that we often use. Notion AI, which is Notion is our knowledge base for our entire business. It's a giant wiki, and its AI product allows us to ask questions about our business and get answers. And then Google AI Studio to make a lot of the imagery, which candidly for me was the most fun. So the first thing that I want to set the table on is a framework for the rest of the discussion today. That there are kind of three parallel paths that are playing out across business right now. Number one is that each individual is on their own road to mastery with this technology. And we each fail and find disappointment. We see the promise of it and then fail to unlock it. And then we persevere through that and start to find actual leverage with it and so on. But then there's the company itself. When everyone in it is busily using AI to enrich their own work streams, what happens with the business processes that today might be laborious, that you might be able to entrust to automation software enriched with AI, or to other things you might create with AI. And then the final one is, how do you bring AI in the thing that you create to your customer? And for all of us, that might mean something different. So this is the ground I want to cover. So this brings us to kind of the first question. How are you and those that you manage leveraging AI to do more of the work? And I'm going to start by kicking it to Jessica. As a marketing leader, how have you seen your team react to the potential of generative AI? And where have they leaned in hard? Where have you seen them be reluctant? You know, what is, as a leader in an organization, what have you witnessed that ground look like for them?
Well, it's been a journey. And I think it all for me really started with hearing what are some of the pain points around what the team is burdened with doing on a day-to-day basis. And so, I love to have career and development conversations. And last year when we were having those, I always ask the question, what is it that energizes you and what is it that drains you about what you do? And for example, with our business development function in my past role, I found that salespeople really are energized by being in front of the customer, being in the restaurants, on the front line. And what drains them is the necessary time that that they spend at their desk doing email and analytics and customer management behind a computer. And so for me, that was really, they say that necessity is the mother of invention. And so that's when it became really clear to me that those were solvable problems with AI. And so what's so interesting about that, though, is you start with that pain point, but then when you start to introduce solutions, I underestimated how important change management is, because while someone says it doesn't energize them, if it's been a big part of how they spend their time, it still can breed some uncertainty around, well, wait a minute, though, I've always done that. So what does that mean for me? And what am I going to do with that unlock time? And then the second part too is we're still relatively early on in this journey with AI. And so the exciting part is that we're early on the journey. And the scary part also is that we're early on, right? So a lot of these tools we are building as we go. And so it can be uncomfortable when you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. There's quite a bit of training that has to go into helping to get these tools to a place where they do unlock value. So it's not as easy as flipping a switch. There's a lot of benefit on the other side, but it does require working through it and helping marketing team members navigate their role in that and what it means for them.
You've inspired 2 follow-up questions for me. One is, on that last thing that you said about it requires time, training, and learning, in many ways, you're just describing they have a new skill to learn. I'm curious if you have a reflection on how learning this skill is different than maybe other skills that you've had to help them navigate. Does it feel different, or in hindsight, as you've seen some people get there, is it really just like learning how to use any other piece of technology?
Well, in some ways, it's similar to growing someone from an individual contributor to a manager, because the skill that you're
Mm,
training how to get results through others. And so, in the
hmm.
traditional sense, that's typically as you grow in your career through, other talent. But now it can also be through technology.
Um, my second follow-up question was in the first part that you talked about the anxiety that might come from someone who's in the process of using AI to get rid of huge chunks of work that maybe they don't enjoy, but they might also feel is the reason you're paying them. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts on what that experience has been like as a manager when you help someone navigate that particular anxiety, or do you feel like maybe you're still kind of in the middle of figuring that out with them?
Well, it's important that we always anchor ourselves in the restaurant as restaurateurs in what is in the best interest of the guest. So if we always anchor
Mm,
back to like, hey, this is bigger than me and you, but what is your highest and best use in service of our customer? And so if we are always thinking through that lens, then there's no shortage of things to do, right? Everyone is trying to do more with less. And so it's really been about helping to reframe and recontextualize why doing less of that work can unlock more meaningful providing a better guest experience.
um, one of the things that I do is I just meet with anyone who will talk to me about this stuff. Literally, I'll post on LinkedIn. I have 30 minutes today. Someone just click this link and let's hang out. And I spent time with a guy who uses AI to automate factory floors, like robots and stuff. And for whatever reason, the lights in this conference room just turned off. Um, anyway, he he gave me this quote that I thought was amazing. He said, "I hate asking smart people to do dumb work." And as I talked to him about it, what he talked about was that every person in their job has something that is truly where their value is shining at the brightest. But maybe they only spend 5 or 10% of their time doing it because they spill so much of the rest of it doing the necessary work that just has to get done. And his perspective was, if you can get all of those things that eat up 90% of your time to be smaller and smaller and smaller, and spend all of your time doing the thing where you shine, you're actually bringing the most value to the business, but also you're illustrating your most value to the business because you're doing the thing that you can't ever automate away. Um, so the way that you just talked about that reminded me of that conversation. Um, Chris, I'm curious, you've spoken with me about what it means to create an environment that fosters adoption and experimentation. Like, what's worked for you when you think about the cultural change and the environment, or maybe it was something you'd already done and it was like ripe for AI to show up. But also, what are you hoping to do to further that environment to make it so that it's a safe, highly encouraged space to leverage this technology and not be afraid that the inevitable outcome is that everyone is fired and replaced with AI?
Yeah, and I think that's one of those pendulums that everybody's navigating. And I think you have to be open, transparent, and honest with you're going to be uncomfortable, but you have to foster an environment that allows you to be uncomfortable while you're comfortable being uncomfortable, if that makes sense. And you have to
Wow.
think of
Okay,
and
I'm with you. Okay.
and you have to know that is our new normal, right? So like long gone are the days where you're going to have a repetitive and repeatable day in the office, repetitive and repeatable day at the job. You should be thinking about how do I do things differently on a daily basis, and leverage the tools that are
Hmm.
available at your disposal as an accelerant, right? You should be chasing ambiguity. You should be chasing failure, and then through that is where learning is going to be found, and then that's where you can apply it to some, like we were talking about, like administrative use cases, some mundane things that will allow you to free up time so you can focus truly on how do I move the business
Hmm.
forward? Not even necessarily move the business forward, but how do I get to a response or an idea quicker? And then how do I pressure
Hmm.
test it more robustly or more holistically so I can further understand, are there any gaps or blind spots that I may have not seen? So I think it really just minimized that thought process or that throughput cycle to where you can really cultivate idea, test it, practice it, try it, pilot it, and get some response and feedback pretty quickly. So I think it's one of those levers that you're going to have to pull, but understand that it's not going to be a definitive straight line.
You know, one of the things that I've heard from my teams is, hey, who's going to give me the time to go learn this stuff and to try to build these things that make me go faster? And my answer to them is, I have an answer I don't say and an answer I do say, and I'll tell you both of them. The answer I do say is, if you have a task in front of you that you think AI should accelerate, then you should spend your time getting AI to help you accelerate it, and it will create its own time, because then the task will go faster and you will have eliminated the cost of a repetitive, thing. And you have to exercise some judgment. If there's something if I could eliminate a task that I do 2 times a year, probably not worth the effort. But if I can eliminate a task, or even knock it in half, that I do twice a day, that's meaningful. And so it's teaching them the skills of that kind of like trade-off of investment. Then I have an answer I don't say, because I worry that it would sound like I'm saying, I expect you to work 24 hours a day for this company, and that's not what I mean. But I currently believe that anybody who is, pursuing a career that involves sitting in front of a computer for some portion of your day, if you aren't mastering these skills, you're going to be in an uncompetitive dynamic when you're looking for your future job. And so everybody should be in night school. If you want to get good at this stuff, then the way that you're going to be the head of the class in that survey is because you spent a Friday night with an old movie on that you weren't really listening to, figuring out, can I get this AI thing to do something for me, and failing at it, but learning in the process. That's going to translate that 2 or 3 years from now, when you're looking for your next job, side by side with another candidate you're competing with, being able to say, like, well, I wrote a bunch of software with AI to help me do most of my last job. And that's going to get you the next one. And so I think that there's a personal journey that we're all on to figure this thing out. And I think that when it pays dividends, it's both self-serving and self-serving for the business too. But one of the things that you just said also resonated with me, that one of the things that AI does is it allows you to try more things and embrace failure more easily, because the cost of trying and failing goes way down. I'm curious if either of you have an example of something that fits that category, an actual tactical example of, I had an idea, I tried it really quickly, and I validated or invalidated it and I wouldn't have done it if AI hadn't been there. Chris, why don't you go?
I think one of the things that, no, I think one of the areas that we use it and try and fail fast is really as we start to mine and analyze like amounts of data, right? So we have varying pockets of information where previously, historically, it would take us extensive period of time to go ahead, sanitize the information, distill it all into one consolidated data warehouse, and then from there kind of get some insights from it. Now we want to deploy AI wherever we can to see if we can get any quick insights to further validate, improve. Hey, is it worth the journey to go even further in this evaluation of these insights? So that's one of those key areas where I think it shortened that curve for us to say quick information pretty rapidly, and then confirm my logic to say, do I need to go further?
So you have a hypothesis about the information that's hiding in your data, and you're able to ask AI to help you get that answer rapidly. And before, you would have had to go maybe pay someone who could do that work for you.
Correct.
And the result is that as you get better of learning how to do prompt engineering and get it to do the right thing for you, you're getting more confident in those rapid fire answers that you're getting back. And so I have that kind of right?
Yes. Yeah. Correct.
Has that, I don't know, if you were to think about like business questions asked of your data per month kind of metric, do you feel like that you've like doubled or tripled, or like, can you a gut sense of how much more rapid and reactive you maybe gotten because you've got this newly inspired confidence?
I said it. We're still evaluating it, because at first you're a little bit hesitant to take it for gospel, right? So even after you get the feedback, you want to check the answer and make sure, like, hey, does this really kind of pass my sniff test? But I do think that we are seeing incremental benefits of it, and just how we're able to react and be nimble in the business, right? So we are identifying use cases. We're like, hey, we're going to try something for 90 days and see if this really is something that is going to be something proven that we can continue to hang our hat on, and then influence, broader business decisions in the future. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it. Whereas previously in my prior life, we would spend potentially a year to 18 months evaluating something similar. We're going to try to do it in 90 days.
Jessica, I'm curious, when you think about what it's meant for you to be able to try things faster, to validate if there's a fast, quick win, and throw it away if not. What does that inspire an anecdote?
Yeah, I mean, I've kissed a few toads, proverbially speaking, when it comes to experimenting with various AI tools. But there's a couple of areas that were real big wins in my previous role. One was through, for our catering business, automating our email sequences. So that unlocked a lot of time for the team. And then the other was guest research. So again, necessity being the mother of invention. One of the biggest pain points when it comes to guest feedback is the SLAs and the time that it takes to get back to a guest. And with our business becoming so digital forward post COVID, now I think guests have a whole nother level of expectation of getting instant resolution to a customer service issue. And it's hard to keep up with the number of inbounds that you get as a restaurant brand. And so we did partner with a vendor who helped us to train as an SMS agent. And that agent is able to respond in real time. So by putting beacons within the restaurants, we're able to actually enable our guests to have a natural language conversation about what was happening in restaurant, and then provide the agent with hundreds of codes so that they could do immediate guest recovery. So yeah, have experimented with it in places where maybe there wasn't the right vendor or the right technology, and then have really unlocked it with the right partners in other areas.
Well, I appreciate both of those anecdotes, and I think about unlocking that kind of mindset for yourself and the people who you report to and your peers and stuff, I think is a big piece of what we're trying to all navigate together. So one of the things that I think about at the company level, going back to the kind of three different columns that I set out at the beginning, I've talked to so many different businesses right now, and I've observed a couple of things that I think are starting to emerge as common threads. One is that I'm starting to see the businesses that have transitioned towards a culture of documentation having this enormous amount of context that they can give to AI. At Thanx, for example, we use Notion, and I would say over the last 18 months, maybe longer than that, we went from an organization that documented a lot to an organization that has a mentality of, if you didn't put it in Notion, it doesn't really count. And the reason why is that Notion AI becomes this tool where you can just go ask it anything about what's going on at the business and get back a very useful answer. Another one is that cross-functional processes become fodder for inserting an intelligence in the middle of a process that can eliminate a lot of work, where previously a human had to go and take an action for each thing that went across their desk. Now they can work on the prompt that helps that thing handle that output for them and get a huge dividend in time saved. And then the last one is creating a culture of celebration when when employees are doing something innovative with this technology. One of the things that I personally believe is that the greatest limiting factor on what you can do with this technology is the inspiration input you have from watching other people do crazy stuff with it. And so I'm always looking for new ways to find anecdotes and signal of what people are actually using it for, because it inspires me to go try something new. And so creating a culture where the organization is putting in their team meeting, for example, a highlight of something someone did in the last week with AI inspires other people to go try that thing. This brings me kind of to my next kind of thought topic here, which is about how the company is changing. How is it leveraging AI to be more strategic? How is it leveraging AI to be more efficient? Not only, you can't do it if you don't solve the first problem. If the individual employee feels lost or not supported or not encouraged or not enabled to go and try things, then you're not going to get the whole organization to go and reinvent how it pursues its strategy and business processes. But when you do have that first thing, suddenly you have two smart people who are both trying to find ways to eliminate busy work because that's how they work. Suddenly the things that they handshake on start to look like that too. And so I'm curious, and maybe this harkens back to some of the stuff we've already talked about, but like Jessica, can you talk maybe about ways that you've leveraged AI to better understand your customers in ways that previously just wouldn't have even been practical to accomplish without an army of humans, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so just to double click on that last one that I referenced, when we were at Dig In expanding into new markets, we were trying to understand were there things about these markets that were different than the core that we had spent so many years, building product market fit around. And static surveys really don't give you the texture that you need to get to the nuance of that, right? Maybe you send out how was your experience today, and you get a 1 through 5 NPS. And so by training this agent, what we were able to do was generate really nuanced conversations with people while they were in the moment in these new restaurants. And we heard things like, oh, the seating is uncomfortable, or we wish that you had more beverage assortment. And so that kind of feedback we would have otherwise probably needed to stand up a focus group and throw a lot of resources at. But by slowing down and actually training an agent around our brand tone and some of the things that we wanted to understand, I was blown away by. Those were not the kinds of insights that I expected to get from AI. It was, for me, it was actually quite counterintuitive, the level of human insight that I got from investing in creating an agent.
I'm curious, when you got feedback about feeding and beverages and whatnot, like, was that actionable and trustworthy? Like Chris just talked a minute ago about, like, I got to go double check and make sure this thing is telling me what it's, that's telling me the truth. You're over here asking customers to have a conversation with it to get signal about what they care about. How did that turn into you getting closer to your customer with what you're offering them?
Yeah, I mean, at the time we made different decisions in terms of future builds. So incorporating soda fountains that were not previously in development plans, reevaluating the seating. And so I think the other thing that's nice is, on the one hand, while you're collecting all of this natural language, the other great thing is on the reporting side that it's able to sift through all of that and share with you themes and an inferred NPS. And so it made it much easier than to go to an executive team and key decision makers and say, hey, these are some of the nuances that may not be reflected in day-to-day sales, but could be impacting whether a guest comes back for a second visit.
Yeah, and I mean, I find when I'm doing that kind of qualitative analysis, that if I ask it to summarize, for example, a bunch of feedback, and then I say, now give me 10 quotes to support that summary argument that you just made. You just made a statement that people don't like the seating. I want the quotes that came directly from the customer. And that's like, so it's helping me find the insight, which is saving me a ton of time.
Right.
But then I'm able to say, now show me your homework, because that's the thing I'm actually going to go put in my board slide to say we got to change out our build or whatever.
Yeah.
Chris, I'm curious, you've already spoken a little bit about using this as the tool in order to better understand the customer data available to you. Are there other things that fit into this category of the business starting to leverage this technology to be more responsive to the customer, to move more rapidly? You've already given a great example. I don't know if this inspires another one or not.
Not a specific example, but I do want to offer some color to approach that as we think about it as a business, how we do it. Because I do think that through some of the things you were communicating earlier, Aaron, there is that kind of that self journey where you're exploring and learning yourself. But I do think as you start to step into that business segment, you do need to take a step back and just think through, like, how do I distill this? Because you have variant pockets of the organization that are maturing at different paces. So trying to find a very fundamental step one problem that is an enterprise problem that we can either all align on and solution and fix is kind of where I think you get the most value out of deploying an AI pilot or test versus trying to solve everything. So I think there's two sides to it, where some people become hyper aggressive, excited, and there's a lot of momentum and you're just throwing AI at everything, which can create. So you do need to think through an approach to be very pragmatic, to distill some of that and say, we're going to focus at this one block at a time, so that as we're going, we're collectively learning as an organization, so that nobody's left behind. So that when we get to the end result, we're not having this conversation of like, how do we get here? What makes sense? The one guy in the room, you have to tell us everything. Is this true or not?
Yeah, I mean, that resonates. I spend a lot of time reading and experimenting with this stuff, and my own coworkers are like, Aaron, will you help me do this thing with AI? And I'm like, no, but I'll sit and watch you figure it out and give you some pointers as you learn. Like, I'm only one person in a large organization. I can't do it for you. You all have to go on this journey. I really like that framework though, because one of the things that I'll say about my own personal experiments is when I bite off too much is when I fail. It's taking me a while to learn that. If I instead break down a problem that I want to improve or to pursue into tiny little iterations, and I just build the first one. So I'm getting value. The second I get to that first step, it's like, well, I saved myself 10% of this thing or whatever. Versus the finish line is miles and miles away. That's where I fail. And I'm hearing a framework that you just described, Chris, that is similar at the business level, where you're like, hey, over the next several months, we want to dramatically change the way we operate in this one aspect of the business, but we're going to start small and we're going to bring everybody along on it. That's just fantastic. Fantastic. Similar question now, taking us in a different direction. What does it mean to go and think about how you bring this to your customer? I'll talk in a minute about my perspective here, which is probably different than most of the people on this call. I build software for you. You're my customer. And there's some obvious opportunities I have to plug this thing in to make your life better. And we're eagerly doing that stuff. But when you think about what it means for you to enrich your relationship between you and your customer, what does that inspire? Like, Jessica, you already gave some great examples by having this feedback conversational agent. What it ultimately allows you to do is add soda fountains and better seats, and that brought you closer to connecting with your customer. But when you think about, marketing automation or, programming your menu, or even how you might, the brand direction you might take, or analyzing the results of your program, all of those kinds of things to bring you closer to a better understanding with your customer and to make their lives, better by understanding and simplifying their work. I don't know. What is that soup of words that just came out of me inspire?
Well, so many things, actually. I think sometimes people think about personalization as a bad thing, like, I don't want cookies. I don't want you to know anything about me. But I think the real future is a hyper personalization that is designed to give you a super bespoke and relevant experience to you. And there is an intersection between kind of like the future of CRM and also customer service. So for example, something that pains me today is, Aaron, if you go into a restaurant and you get a burnt chicken sandwich or something, and then you get an SMS from the brand 3 hours later promoting that chicken sandwich, but we still haven't resolved your customer service experience, that doesn't feel right? How that's personalization, I don't, 1.0 maybe, but in the future, we should know where you are in the totality of your relationship with the brand. And so if we owe you a response on a customer service experience, we should halt on any marketing communications until that's been resolved. And in an ideal state, we're resolving that in a pretty timely manner. So it really is about doing all of these things in service of providing a better guest experience. And I think if we do that, you're going to have a personalization experience as a guest that actually feels like it's giving you a better overall experience, as opposed to you feeling like you're being kind of bombarded with messages that may not be relevant to you.
Well, it's interesting. I've heard, my whole career about the right message at the right time to the right person, which is really a machine learning problem. It's a very doable thing. That is a thing that many marketing technologies have brought to market. It costs a lot of money to create those models. You're talking about something a little different, which is real-time intelligence. I know what is about to go out the door in a campaign to you, but I also know that you're in a state of dissatisfaction, and I'm going to exert some decision-making based on some prompting that I've been given to hold up on that. And maybe what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to send the message to you that the the person who normally would have had to wait until they had time to write it. I'm going to take that role. And in this world where you can be real-time intelligent, your capacity to engage with your guest, you already gave an example of this, of solving problems for customers in the store when something doesn't go right. But when you are able to plug in the totality of all your marketing messages and interactions with the customer into the context window, to use the parlance of our times, of what the agent is capable to do to help you make real-time decisions on a per guest basis, that's very different than a machine learning, like, I think what Jessica needs right now is a donut, and so I'm going to send her a message. That's a different kind of intelligence. This intelligence is, I'm going to take care of the guest. Mm-hmm. It's a different kind of thing.
Right.
For all of you dialing in at home, you're watching my own light bulb go off. I've never heard anyone say what Jessica just said, and it's inspiring me. I now have all sorts of synapses firing about what it means to develop real-time guest intelligence this way. Thank you. I appreciate you inspiring me that way. Chris, tough act to follow, maybe. When you think about what it means for you to be better connected to your customers with this technology, or for it to help you do that, what kind of ideas does that inspire in you?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that what Jessica was just describing is foundational, transformative. It's like next gen. And I think for us as a emerging and growing brand, it's more so around information acquisition, because that customer relationship is so delicate. We want to be very intentional to ensure that engagement is positive, and that our customers are getting the type of responses or engagement with any AI insights, whether it be AI insights or communication, that we feel is going to provide productivity and move the needle. So it's really just trying to be hyper-focused on learning about them, and then determine what do we do differently to engage with them on their terms. That's how we think about it from a customer-centric perspective. And then what Jessica was describing, I think, is that next step of, all right, now that we've gotten a good inventory of who you are, Aaron, what you do, how you like to be communicated to, how do we deploy technology to do that, to meet you at your terms?
Mm-hmm. I think it's an interesting question about what it means to scale this technology. Just like machine learning is really expensive to go build models that can predict what the customer is likely to do next. LLMs, they burn tokens, and those are expensive. And I think it will be an interesting thing for this technology as it matures to see what it means to be able to go solve problems at scale like that in a way that's cost effective, or at least drives ROI that you can measure. This brings me to my next question around ROI. What are your expectations of your vendors now, and how they'll use AI to make your life better, or to help you make your customers' life better? Like, has this started to percolate into your mindset as you interact with vendors you already have, as well as vendors? You're both nodding. I can stop talking. Jessica, you just moved into a new role. Congratulations. And I'm sure that part of that is like getting the landscape of the vendors that are currently in place, and also thinking like, I got to bring in some stuff, Plus, you just talked about a vendor that you worked with at Dig, where you did a bunch of cool AI things. And can you maybe share your perspective on what does it mean to evaluate a technology company in 2025 when this wild card has been added to the mix?
Yeah. Well, to put it very simply, they need to do one of two things. Either they need to make the members of my team's life easier, or my guest experience better. That's it. Like, those are the only two conversations I want to entertain. But to answer your previous question, sometimes when I'm talking to vendors, I think AI first startups, to be specific. Sometimes I think you should be talking to my vendor, my agency partner.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that I'm seeing out there that the future of is white labeling. And so I have come to certain agency partners in my past life and said, how are you leveraging AI to do some of these things that right now I know are labor intensive and we're not doing to our full capacity? An example is, I talked a lot about on the guest experience side. Well, what about on social listening? There's so much that we could be leveraging AI to hear where are we a part of conversations? Where do we have a right to be a part of conversations? When is a trend about to become viral? And that's an opportunity for us to jump into that conversation. But those are not skill sets that perhaps I necessarily want to build team side, but I want to work with the right agency partners that are leveraging these technologies to give us a better experience as their customers. So yes, I feel very passionate and vocal about that.
Chris, I wonder if you might also reflect on what you are now, how this has changed your dynamic and how you evaluate both the performance of your current vendors and the ones that you're starting to evaluate. I don't know,
Yeah.
has it started to influence that?
Yeah, it's definitely influencing that for current and future vendors, because I think it's just made the thought leadership paramount, right? It's not about the need that we approach you for today and the service you're going to be applying. It's, do you think the same way that I think? And does your thought process
Mm-hmm.
align with us, not just us as an organization or a function, but as a brand? And are we aligned there in how you solution? Are you nimble? Are you thinking from an innovation lens? And how can we leverage your strengths to extend the capabilities of us as a team, as we are not trying to build out a very large and robust organization where we can put the SMEs and experts that are going to be thinking maniacally day and night about these problems and use cases to help expedite and accelerate our growth as well. So those relationships are definitely critical and imperative to make sure that those, from a strategic and, again, a leadership perspective, you're aligned. And if you're not, then you could become stagnated, right? Because then it's kind of a responsive trend of, hey, this is what we offer, this is what we signed. But beyond that, like, how are we solving the problem that we don't know exists today?
Reflecting on that, you are my customer. And so my takeaway selfishly there is I need to spend more time with Chris to make sure that I am actually thinking about this the way that he is. I think any good technology vendor has to be spending time with their customers, listening to them. But that introduces an interesting dynamic, because if we go back to the very first poll, a lot of people on the call are still kind of in the I don't know what to do with this thing mode. And so if you, Chris, they might do like Jessica said, and some of the people in our audience today might put you in the head of the class category compared to where they feel like they are. I'm curious if you have any advice for someone who maybe isn't yet in the I use this thing all day long and I've been doing some crazy things with it category. I don't know. Do either of you have any recommendations on what it would mean to be trying to navigate vendor selection in this landscape, given that it's starting to affect and percolate throughout what it means for the tools you pay for to make your life better or your customer's life better, as Jessica put it?
Mm-hmm. I got a couple, I think, really like discrete, kind of fundamental 1 or 2 steps, right? The first is understanding that as you're partnering with a vendor, not necessarily, hey, we're getting in this engagement to deploy this piece of technology. It's AI is coming. It's not a question of if, or it's a question of when and how. And then those are the 2 areas you really need to unpack is, what does your journey look like with AI? And then how do you envision leveraging it with your product and or service to set you apart in this space? And then when you're deploying those partnerships, it's also thinking through like future-proofing the evolution of the landscape. Like, we're on the precipice of AI. It's going to continue to evolve. So that's where that thought leadership becomes critical, because you can't just kind of bunker into one area. You have to be open to failure, growth, and evolving as the whole landscape evolves and turns.
Oh, it's interesting that you loop that right back to where you are on the individual level. I want a vendor who's open to experimentation and growth with this technology, because if they aren't, they're not going to lead.
Yep.
I appreciate you sharing that perspective. I have one more slide that's in this kind of peanut gallery discussion mode. And this one is a little different, a little more fun maybe, which is I want us to put on our future hat, where we hope this stuff will take us. I have my own hopes and dreams about where this technology is going, but I don't want to go first. So Jessica, maybe you can talk about, you shared just a minute ago about what you expect your vendors to go and do and make your life better. And you introduced this concept to me, at least. I'll remember this is the day that I thought that I cottoned onto this idea that you shared with me around real-time intelligence as a thing that AI is bringing to the table rather than predictive, for example. I don't know. Have you spent a lot of time thinking about what it means to run a restaurant with a relationship with consumers in 5 or 10 years time, which we can barely imagine what that's going to look like, what are the things that you find yourself thinking like, golly, I'll be alive to see that, you know?
Well, I'm really excited for us to preserve the human component that makes hospitality special. And so I don't
Mhm.
ever want to see that go away. What I want to see is the technology continue to enable team members to to be able to focus on the parts that AI will never be able to replace, which is the human component that is hospitality. And so I do envision that does mean that there is a world where you walk into a restaurant and maybe you are, scanning some sort of QR code that is making a suggestion for you based off of your past 3 to 5 experiences, and is checking up with you at the end of that experience and making sure that they understand what could have been done differently. But throughout all of that, that is underpinned by real humans cooking and preparing real food from the heart.
Mhm. It's interesting. It's like it's a way for you to create a more scalable hospitality experience that still reinforces the value of the fact that there's a human being making something for you.
Yeah, and let those folks focus on doing what they do best, and let the
Hmm.
technology take care of everything that happens as you're making the decision to step into that space and as you
Hmm.
are departing.
Yeah. Chris, when you think about, you know, what it means to be running a restaurant in a few years when this technology has matured and is woven throughout your entire business, what are your hopes? What are your thoughts?
It's actually very interesting. It's similar to what Jessica was describing, and I kind of think of it through the lens of autonomy, right? Like um, AI being a catalyst to autonomous experiences that allow you to focus in on the key elements that make you different, right? So the things that are going to be mundane and routine will be optimized, and then they'll be happening just innately. And then there, you're able to focus in on hyper-focused experiences to differentiate yourself so that you can come
Yeah.
in and feel the warmth of our brand and then how it differs from anything else.
The time has slipped away from me. I have a few slides here that talk about what we are working on, and I'm going to zip through them. I'm actually glad we spent most of our time on other stuff. Um, so where we are headed is closer to the first thing that Jessica said, which was we want to eliminate a lot of the work that we expect our users to put into the platform. We want to give advice and insight when we enable them to go and get more done. But mostly we want to take away the busy work of the platform to allow you to be more responsive to customers. After that, so the first thing we're launching right now is an AI powered segmentation tool that is it's got 10 times more attributes than our current tool because you don't have to manage it by hand. You just tell it what business goal you're trying to achieve. The second thing we're doing is we're bringing in a layer of intelligence from all of the other uses of our platform in order to be able to tell that story to help you just name a business goal. I want more digital orders. And it can say, well, here's a lot of different ways that we can pursue that together. And to give it the context about what your business is performing right now relative to others on the platform. And then the third phase that we're headed for is what happens when our partners that we're integrated with now are able to talk to our AI. And the consumer who's using these things is no longer in a specific dashboard. They're just expressing their wishes to the entire ecosystem. I'm going to skip over how that's going to work a little bit. But we've already started launching MCP servers for our APIs and things like that to try and foster those relationships. The last thing I'm going to skip over or jump to is, and then we're going to wrap. There's only one question that I saw get posted, which is I do have a new thing that I'm doing, which is a kind of boot camp for restaurants. The first one actually starts on Friday. It's too late to get into that one. But if you're interested in joining, this is a kind of a 6 weeks, but only 3 meetings, homework oriented class where we just create some problem sets that we go through and throw ourselves into actually doing this stuff together. What does it mean to ask software or ask AI to go write scripts for you that do work for you and things like that? This is interesting. You can send an email to cdo@Thanx.com and we'll follow up from there. The one question that I see is a technical question, which is Jessica asking, can you name the vendor that did all the feedback stuff that you did all the feedback stuff with?
Oh, yes. They're called Be Heard, and happy to connect with anybody offline if they want to know more.
Okay. Well, I'm really happy with how we used the time. I'm sorry we didn't have time to get to more questions, but if anyone submits them, we'll definitely follow up with you.
Great. Hey, thank you, folks, for a very interesting conversation. I learned a lot, and I think the audience probably did as well. Our knowledge share work here is done, though, ladies and gentlemen. So along those lines, I'd like to thank today's presenters, Aaron Newton of Thanx, Chris Douglas of Small Sliders, and Jessica Serrano of Bagel Brands. Another grand thank you, of course, is due to Thanx for its sponsorship, without which this program would not have been possible. When it arrives in email, please share the program replay link for today's session with interested associates. I think they'll thank you for it. And if you've not done so, check out the resources area of your webinar console for documents or links to information relevant to today's presentation or sponsor. Finally, do please join us for future NRM webinars. But for now, know that all of us here bid you a very good day.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Jessica and Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.